Chapter 2, In Memoriam. Harry was bleeding, clutching his right hand in his left and swearing under his breath. He shouldered open his bedroom door. There was a crunch of breaking china. He had tried on a cup of cold tea that had been sitting on the floor outside of his bedroom. He looked around. The landing of number 4 Privet Drive was deserted. Possibly the cup of tea was Dudley's idea of clever booby trap. Keeping his bleeding hand elevated, Harry scraped the fragments of cup together with the other hand and threw them into the already crammed bin. Just invisible at his bedroom door, then he tramped across to the bathroom to run his fingers under the tap. It was stupid, pointless, irritating beyond belief that he still had 4 days left of being unable to perform magic. But he had to admit to himself that this jagged cut in his finger would have defeated him. He had never learned how to repair wounds, and now he came to think of it, particularly in light of his immediate plans. This seems a serious flaw in his magical education, making a mental note to ask Hermione how it was done. He used a large wad of toilet paper to mop up as much of the tea as he could, before returning to his bedroom and slamming the door behind him. Harry had spent the morning completely emptying his school trunk for the first time since he had packed it 6 years ago. At the start of the intervening school years, he had merrily skimmed off the topmost 3/4 of the contents and replaced or updated them, leaving a layer of general debris at the bottom of old quills, desiccated beetle-eyes, single socks that had no longer fitted. Minutes previously, Harry had plunged his hand into this mulch and experienced a stabbing pain in the forefinger of his right hand and withdrawn it to see a lot of blood. He now proceeded, a little more cautiously, kneeling down beside the trunk again. He groped around in the bottom and after retrieving an old badge that flickered feebly between support Cedric Diggory and Potter Stinks, a crabbed and worn-out sneakoscope, and a gold locket inside which a note signed R.A.B. had been hidden. He finally discovered the sharp edge that had done the damage. He recognised it at once. It was a 2-inch long fragment of the enchanted mirror that his godfather Sirius had given him. Harry laid it aside and felt cautiously around the trunk for the rest, but nothing more remained of his godfather's last gift except powdered glass, which clung to the deepest layer of debris like glittering grit. Harry sat up and examined the jagged piece from which he had cut himself, seeing nothing but his own bright green eye reflected back at him. Then he placed the fragment on top of that morning's daily prophet which lay unread on the bed, and attempted to stem the sudden upsurge of bitter memories, the stabs of regret and of long discovery of the broken mirror had occasioned, by attacking the rest of the rubbish in the trunk. It took another hour to empty it completely, throw away the useless items, and sort the remainder in piles, according to whether or not he would need to throw them on. His school and Quidditch robes, cauldron, parchment quills, and most of his textbooks were piled in a corner to be left behind. He wondered what his aunt and uncle would do with them. Burn them in the dead of night, probably, as if they were evidence of some dreadful crime. His muggle clothing, invisibility cloak, potion-making kit, Saturn books, the photograph album Hagrid had once given him, stack of letters, and his wand had been repacked into an old rucksack. In a front pocket with a Marauders map, and the locket with a note signed R.A.B. inside it. The locket was accorded this place of honour, not because it was valuable in all usual senses, it was worthless, but because of what it had to cost to attain it. This left a sizable stack of newspapers sitting on his desk beside his snowy elm, Hedwig, one for each of the days Harry had spent at Privet Drive this summer. He got up off the floor, stretched and moved across to his desk. Hedwig made no movement as he began to flick through the newspapers, throwing them onto the rubbish pile by one. The owl was asleep or else faking it. She was angry with Harry about the limited amount of time she was allowed out of her cage at the moment. As he neared the bottom of the pile of newspapers, Harry slowed down, searching for one particular edition which he knew had arrived shortly after he returned to Privet Drive for summer. He remembered that there had been a small mention of the front about the resignation of Charity Burbage, the Muggle Studies teacher at Hogwarts. At last he found it, turning to page 10. He sank into his desk chair and reread the article he had been looking for. Albus Dumbledore Remembered by Alpheus Dodge. I met Albus Dumbledore at the age of 11 on our first day of Hogwarts.